This problem is universal. 100% of people feel that they should be more active than they are. If you're running ultramarathon a day, you want to do more. If you're sitting depressed with a beer in front of TV and not moving at all, you are dreaming of actually being in a better shape. So it's absolutely universal. And if a problem is universal, you always have a reasonably simple explanation.
Oleg Fomenko, welcome on to Searching for Mana.
Thank you. Pleasure being here.
Pleasure to have you on the show. Slightly, but not too full, introduction. Founder, chief executive with Sweatcoin, a product that has recently moved onto the blockchain and is establishing phenomenal traction. Walking to earn token and increase health, generally speaking, is something that we want to dig into, that you guys are doing. Before I blow the cover on all the amazing stats that's going on right now, and they're changing weekly, would you be so kind just to talk us through what's going on at Sweatcoin at the moment and some of the incredible stats?
Great. Thank you very much for this lead. I think it's an amazing, few weeks for us, or probably even a month. We've just hit more than 67 million users, and by the time this airs, this probably would be already close to 70. And what's even more exciting is that since we announced, which was only 2 weeks ago, we already created more than 1.2 million wallets, which means that users of our app have opted in and created a wallet on Near protocol that we'll probably be talking about a little bit later, and are ready to accept our token when it comes out in summer this year. So think of it as whitelisting, but not whitelisting, oh, I'm interested. I'm interested and I'm totally ready, and everything is absolutely primed. And as soon as token is live, they will actually receive it in their wallets, and they will be able to start sort of operating using it on blockchain.
Incredible traction. And if you could just speak more about the user case.
Yeah. The use case is quite old, actually, because we started thinking about this business in 2015. Me and my co-founder went for a run. I had 2 very young kids who were obsessed with this movie called WALL-E. And I don't know if you've got young kids, if they like something, they just can't stop watching it. So I've probably seen WALL-E with them 20 or 30 times. And this sad future of blob humans riding on scooters, and when they're off, robots need to come and pick them up because they can't move, and terribly unhealthy, terribly overweight, obese. And I remember kind of thinking about it, and also going for a run. I realized that I couldn't complete 5K. So all of these things were sitting in the back of my mind.
Why couldn't you complete 5K?
Because I've been really busy building another venture, and for 3 years it's been absolutely crazy. Young kids, startup, kind of working crazy hours. And after 3 years of it, when it perished and I started thinking of the next venture, I couldn't complete 5K because I basically just lost my fitness.
Right. Okay.
And the question was, how the hell did I lose my fitness? 3 years prior, I was climbing some of the highest mountains in the world. And right now, I cannot complete 5K without sort of holding onto my chest and, kind of hanging off a tree. That was very disappointing.
You saw yourself in that WALL-E film.
Very much so. And I started wondering, so if I lost, arrogantly, I do consider myself probably, kind of reasonably motivated and quite intelligent. If I was not able to sort of look after myself and keep that motivation, then, kind of how big is this problem really is. And I started talking to my co-founder, and sort of one word after another and a bit of research, and we realized that this problem is universal. 100% of people feel that they should be more active than they are. If you're running ultramarathon a day, you want to do more. If you're sitting depressed with a beer in front of TV and not moving at all, you are dreaming of actually being in a better shape. So it's absolutely universal. And if a problem is universal, you always have a reasonably simple explanation. So we started digging into behavioral economics, into history, etc. And we stumbled into a very interesting realization that the reason why you, me, everyone is not as active as they want to be is because nature doesn't want you to be active. Nature built you to survive, which means that you're not about squandering calories, which are extremely precious. At the time when we were sort of created, programmed, and kind of started really kind of our journey, those calories had to be preserved, which means that you're sitting around the fire and you're kind of chilling until either mammoth shows up and then you need to kill it, or saber-toothed tiger shows up and then you need to run because you don't want to be a meal. Otherwise, there is absolutely no point in being physically active. And nature continues to maintain this through the use of what's called, present bias. It's behavioral bug, I think we would call it, but it's actually a feature that saved our lives, that makes us focused on right here, right now, rather than on some far-fetched benefits. If I were to say, Lloyd, you know what? I'm going to pay you $1 billion in 200 years for this favor. It's going to be totally irrelevant for you. And this is this present bias that pushes however high the reward is in the future. If it's in a far-fetched future, it's totally irrelevant. There is another word for it called hyperbolic discounting. So the discounting of future benefits happens hyperbolically. So present bias has only one solution: instant gratification.
Yeah.
We know this because there is another human behavior that was really badly affected by present bias.
Social media?
No. Back then, there was no social media. It's procreation.
Okay, yeah.
Procreation needed an orgasm in order for us not to screw it up. Without an orgasm, we would probably be superseded already by cockroaches. What nature failed to do is to give us an orgasm for exercise. And this is basically kind of the original sort of train of thought that led to creation of Sweatcoin. We thought, what instant gratification can we create for physical activity? How can we make people enticed to take more steps every day? And kind of this nature journey and this whole story kind of led us to think, if this is universal and if this is an explanation, then what can be the reward that we can give you for every single step? And we came up with the idea that we're going to create our own currency and we're going to pay you for steps that you take every day, and we're going to create value in that currency because it's backed by the value of physical activity. Already in 2016, we were looking at blockchain, as the name suggests, Sweatcoin. There is something there. We actually met with Vitalik Buterin in 2016, in early 2016, and we discussed building on then research-grade project Ethereum. And he persuaded us that it was a bit too early, and our idea was not as sort of secure. So there is very, kind of his concern was it's very difficult to secure the link between verifiable steps and putting them on blockchain. And we just said, look, kind of our objective is not to have, everything 100% watertight. Our objective is to make the world more physically active. We'll figure out the rest as we go along. So we decided to go centralized.
Yep.
And by 2017, we were already processing more than a few hundred transactions per second. That saved our life because if we were to build on Ethereum or on blockchain or Bitcoin blockchain that have throughput of 15 for Ethereum and 8 for blockchain, we would have been dead, or we would have killed either Bitcoin or Ethereum with our massive scale.
So at that point, there's a couple of questions I want to go back to.
Absolutely.
Then we'll take it forward from that kind of seminal moment where the traction happens as a centralized business.
Yeah.
So you talk about incentives ruling behavior and looking at history, which is super interesting. So what incentives did you look through? So clearly what you came up with was coin and money.
Yeah.
And I can guess why that might be. What did you weigh it up against and how did you go with that?
Well, I mean, we looked at, kind of everything, you name it, we looked at it. Rewards, vouchers, recognition,
Yeah.
loss aversion, if there are biases out there, then we've considered them. And the reason why we stopped
You didn't want to tie it in with someone's life insurance.
We did. We
There's a company
did
that's
talk.
doing that.
Yeah, ULife, we know
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
We know them very well. And the thing that we were interested in is to making the world more physically active. And kind of we want to go for hundreds of millions, 1 billion people. And in order to achieve this ambition, you really have to go very, 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 kind of universal level. And life insurance, how many people in the UK have life insurance?
Well, I suppose it's back to the point as well of you've got to have quite a long-term value perspective there. You asked me if I'd take billions of pounds for 200 years, and I'm up for it.
Okay.
But it's quite a far
Right.
way out. Whereas life insurance is, what is that for a lot of people? 20 to 50 years, and maybe not the direct incentive that
That's true.
money is. And then I can see now how token works so well, because of course, if it's geographically spread, then this is going to be much, much more simple. And so then we come
Absolutely.
to the next bit before then we move on, which is you got to meet with the guy in the space, the guy who created Ethereum. How did that come about? How were you in that that kind of circumference of competence at that point?
Personal Networks, my co-founder, Anton Derletka, I think knew someone close to Vitalik. We've, I ran into him at one of the meetups, very early kind of Ethereum meetups. There were like, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 people. It was really, really quite...
in 2016?
Yeah.
It's that small then?
Yeah, 2015, we started following 2015, 2016. We met with him sort of one-to-one, or three of us, me, Anton, and Vitalik, I think in early 2016. And that was a seminal meeting where we decided that, we are going to start centralized because we felt that our proposition, while it lends itself and it should be built on blockchain, the MVP, minimum viable product, does not require this technology. We want to confirm that people would want to walk more on the back of this proposition, and that partners that we felt we would need to create substance in Sweatcoin would be excited to come in and provide this value to our users if we launched. So, kind of we felt that, we're going to start centralized and then we're going to switch to blockchain. And as I mentioned to you, by 2017, our backend was smoldering, and we were, kind of crossing ourselves and, saying, thank God we didn't go into blockchain because we would have been dead.
How did you do that? How did you get that initial community to buy into wanting to use this?
Yeah, great question. I think that this is what I tell to aspiring sort of startups. You really focus on your user, on their problem, and on the product that solves that problem. As I described to you, the problem of not being as active as you want is universal. This kind of sinks in really quickly. We, after evaluating what should be our product, we basically honed down very quickly on it needs to be very simple. It needs to be, there is a financial or financial-like reward for every step that arrests people and makes them go like, holy shit, how does it work? What? You pay me to walk. I remember we had a lot of early conversations with investors, and they were saying, well, this is a charity. This is not a business. You're going to pay people to walk? Where are you going to take the money? This is not a business. Go away.
And what were you saying to them at that point, Oleg?
Well, we were just saying that, look, the physical activity has value. It has value to you. It has value to your doctor. It has value to your life insurer. You already mentioned that. it has value to the healthcare provider, NHS. We're already working with NHS in the UK because they understand the value of making population more physically active. Ultimately, countries are very interested in you being more physically active. You're going to live longer, you're going to be happier, you're going to be more economically active, you're probably going to generate more taxes. It's a very, very good deal for everyone. And because of that, there is a very, very good business case in what we do, because by bringing this behavioral change, we're creating a lot of economic value, and by capturing just small chunks of it, we're actually going to have sustainable business, which we now have evidence and the proof of, but back then it was a bit more, kind of barking mad idea. Some people said yes to, and they're very happy right now, and some people said no to, and hopefully they're regretting that no.
And there's clearly a couple of profit levers that you still haven't pulled to kind of transact on. But what did you at that point do? You were using the partnerships where the connotation, let's say the NHS is buying into what you're doing, and then it's still always free for the community. And you're still at that point now? Yeah.
Very much. We do have a user product, so we do have premium subscription. So users pay, but it is by far not the kind of main revenue stream for us. It's very rapidly growing, but
can I understand
one of many.
The different experiences that you could have on the app right now? So you always refer to walking.
Sure.
Not running as well?
No, every step. So walking, running, dancing.
Just doesn't matter how that step is achieved.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And your experience is in real time showing you the returns, or are you kind of on a daily basis getting the report?
It's neither nor, so it's not in real time. We started with that, but it was just very onerous for your devices, for your bandwidth, for data consumption. So it now happens multiple times a day. So significant chunks of your steps, somewhere between 1 and 5,000. Once they accumulate, the phone wraps them, encodes them, encrypts them, and sends them to our backend for verification. This is one of the most important things that we spend absolutely enormous amount of time and effort on to make sure that the steps that we receive can be verified. And because as soon as we launched, everyone and their dog were trying to sort of scam. Kind of people were putting phones on their dogs and running in the park. People were putting them on dishwashers and washing machines. People were attaching their phones to metronomes. There is like rotating on the rope. There is a website called unfitbits.com that teaches people how to trick your wearable and your phone into believing that you're moving. So we basically had to deal with all of that.
This is where we need the chip in the brain, and then there's no way of scamming this.
I wouldn't go that far. But actually, if you really think about it and you spend time, you can figure out all of these use cases and prevent them from happening, or prevent those steps that appear on your phone from being considered or converted into Sweatcoins, which is what we have.
Thanks so much for bringing us up to speed. I feel I've got a good grasp of everything, and we'll, in the final part of the show, talk about some future projections. I want to kind of go back through some of your bio. Just before I do, just on this particular point, congratulations, looking in fantastic nick. So this has worked for you. The app has kind of scratched your itch, and it's incentivizing you to do more activity, run, walk. And what's a typical week like for you?
I wish I walked more. This never stops.
Is the money not enough? Do you need to crank it up?
I think that it's, let's have a look. I think that, my last few days are definitely quite busy. So today, because I'm actually staying right around the corner, it's not many steps, so it's 1,700 steps. But yesterday was 11,000, the day before 15,500, the day before 21,000, 15,000. So yes, I'm clocking some.
You're a good
some
ambassador
good,
for this then.
Yeah, I'm putting
happy
one
over
foot in
10.
front of another many times a
If
day.
it's over 10, then I'm like, okay, that's not terrible.
Yeah.
I find when you travel, if you go to a different city, you clock up like 20.
Absolutely.
Just like moving around so
Yes.
much. I always feel that's good. And then sometimes, as you say, you look and you're like, oh my God, I've only done 5,000 today. And
This is what we've discovered.
I feel bad. What are your trends across the segmentation? Like, what are you seeing
Yeah.
the outliers to be, and what's the typical averages?
Great question. Very, very good question. First of all, we've discovered that, over the years, we've done some really, really good work. In the UK, we worked with the University of Warwick,
Amazing.
which is, very, very respected sort of digital health institution.
It's all right. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's one of the right ones.
Have you graduated from there?
No. Somewhere far worse.
Okay. So, we worked with them because they were very interested in figuring out how much of a behavior change
Yep.
or how much more active we would actually make users. And after, I think it was a 6-month study, there is a publication online if you search sort of Sweatcoin Journal for Medicine, something like that. There is a very, very respected British Journal for Medicine.
Yep.
We are making our users 20% more active. So,
Wow.
if you start thinking about STEP not as a sort of calorie burn, and therefore from nature's perspective, not necessarily the thing to encourage, but you flip the relationship with STEP on its head, and it's an enriching activity, then people started doing interesting things. So in the UK, especially where public transport is very, very big, transportation on a daily basis, especially pre-COVID when people commuted, the interesting thing that we observed is people would skip 1 or 2 bus stops.
Nice.
Yeah. People would go for a dog walk for a lot longer in the evening. People would take their lunch break and would go a little bit further from the office. So there would be this, they wouldn't all of a sudden become like, fitness junkies, but they would manage to fit into their daily routines more steps without sacrificing much in a way of time or in a way of, actually mostly time.
And I look, are people also doing that on your app where they're able to kind of get the feeling of accolade because they're sharing that with a social community?
Yes, there are leaderboards, and it
Yeah.
works really well to encourage people.
Yeah.
We also gamified.
Because I'd do that, like that's for sure. If I could see that you're
Yeah.
averaging 11,000, I'd just be like getting off the bus early to get
Absolutely.
past it.
We, in one interview, there was a great use case where this young lad was saying that among their friends, the guy who buys pints on Friday is the one who walked the least the week before.
Great.
It was quite funny. There is another very interesting use case. So, for example, my kids' cash that I give to them, the sort of early teens, is pegged to the number of Sweatcoins that they generate. So if they want to have an extra ice cream or whatever, they know what to do.
Yeah.
They just need to put one foot in front of another more times per day.
Because it's a delicate topic, isn't it? If you're just talking about aesthetics, like how is the steps or the activity going to make you outwardly look right? It could then go towards something close to vanity.
Yeah.
Which, not that people aren't affected by that, but if it's to do with you're healthy.
Yeah.
And by being active, also, I'd be interested to talk about. We're doing the final part, your wellness.
Yeah.
How it can. Certainly if I go for a 45-minute walk and it clears your mind and you get to think about things, you're away from the technology, then it's such a wonderful thing. So I think in there, we'll cover that in the final bit where we can get to understand your vision of how it builds out into quite a full product, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Let's go back now. So serial entrepreneur, also worked at some massive corporate businesses, but I would like to go even further back with this question. So when did you first start thinking about and really defining who you might be in your career?
It's a very good question. I wouldn't say that it was terribly early, because I was going through sort of gates of getting my education, etc., and I wouldn't call myself terribly conscious back then. One of my first jobs was selling brown sugary fizzy water, working for Pepsi. Then I worked for Mars. Then I worked for Coca-Cola. With the benefit of
Why did you
hindsight,
choose those?
they were
those career
very
paths?
much opportunity based, as opposed to the way I look at things right now, which
And
is
was
more
that-
about passion and my personal interest.
And was that because there was a circumstance that made you choose those drivers that way?
Yeah, I think that it was sort of curiosity and travel and interest to sort of see the world, and joining international business or business that is known as, sort of global was very, very exciting for me. I very quickly realized that, kind of actually sort of being inside was great school. It's amazing in terms of discipline, in terms of approach, and, kind of some of the basic stuff that I picked up there. But they were definitely not something that I would say are in line with my values right now, kind of making the world a better place. Selling, copious quantities of sugar is not necessarily something that, kind of I would entertain in the slightest. But back then, I think that my awareness of health issues was completely different. I definitely would have never considered cigarettes, but right now, kind of sometimes when people ask me, so why did you start Sweatcoin? If I just want to have a joke, I just say, well, it's for the previous sins. I must have I must have made few people fat, so right now I need to kind of work backwards and help them to lose all that the weight that I made them gain.
And where,
By selling on Coca-Cola.
through that journey, which growth mindset you've taken, wouldn't want to do it anymore, but the positives from a career perspective and learning perspective, and sounds like you got to travel and stuff. Perhaps earn some decent money. When was the consciousness? When did you start thinking, look, actually, I, as you say, want to make the world a better place, happier place, healthier place. I'm going to do this through my own entrepreneurialism in preference to joining missions.
Yeah, I was born in Soviet Union, so being an entrepreneur is very similar in notion to being someone that will end up in jail sooner or later. And that definitely wasn't in my plans. So to be honest, I became a very keen entrepreneur to be when I came to the UK, and after a few years, because when I joined, I started working for Boston Consulting Group here in the UK in the year 2000. And that was a very interesting time. In consulting, there were a lot of failed entrepreneurs because there was this boom, 98, 99, lots of startups, exactly, that was a bust. And a lot of failed entrepreneurs ended up going into consulting. So I was surrounded by people that have tried and largely failed to build their own companies. And these stories really, really quite enticed me, even though they were, they joined BCG because they were not very successful. But the stories of actually, coming up with a problem definition, really kind of building something of your own, were very, very compelling. And I remember that I started looking into that, but back then I couldn't even get a bank account because kind of banks wouldn't really consider opening business for a Russian national. So I got my British passport, and as soon as I got it, the next day I basically started my business.
And then if you want a BCG experience, that's a trend we see in a lot of the entrepreneurs in the UK. If you then want to take us to, a story of relevance, could be challenge, could be something you're proud of. Entrepreneurially, before then we talk about the founding of Sweatcoin.
Yeah. I think that, to be honest, if anything, I found BCG an unhelpful experience for being an entrepreneur, and I'll explain why. Because as a consultant, you really have to cover every single base for your decision and your recommendation. Sales, great, kind of explaining, delivering communication, all of that is great, but you typically end up delivering to the client something that really needs to look at a problem from 360 degrees and cover every single eventuality. While in reality, being in a startup, if you do that, you're just going to be late. And you have to take shots with a lot less information than you would normally be comfortable as a consultant.
Yeah.
And to get that out of your system and kind of go, well, you know what, I'm not entirely sure, but this looks like a better shot, is quite difficult. And then you just learn, like, you know what, let's go. Because in startup, doing right thing very frequently comes at a price of doing it late. And being fast is absolutely, you know, kind of the most important thing. Because when you work fast, you end up doing 2-3 things, and if one of them is correct, you've just stumbled into something, and then you can build on it.
Yeah.
If you're spending an awful lot of time to do one thing, you increase probability of, you know, kind of that attempt being higher, but you're not increasing it by factor 3.
Yeah.
So speed versus quality is the trade-off that in consulting falls in the opposite direction.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? I have a bunch of peer group who are in similar and very good strat consulting positions as partners now.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll get them to collaborate on ideas I have or documentation.
Yeah.
And I just can't believe that, like, the response will come in 2 weeks' time. I'm like, I mean, that's too late. It's gone. We shipped that already.
Yeah. It's already published and it was killed.
Yeah. And there's a quote which I think Obama's famous for, where he says, you know, I make decisions if I feel that it's 51% the right decision, because you learn that making the decision with some instinct, you're not sure, action happens, you can refine and iterate off the back of that. So that change in mindset is absolutely crucial. But you found that something that then you had to adjust to.
Yeah, very much so.
And then you clearly did. And if you could be so kind to talk us through that seed and that founding. You already talked about, obviously, with your partner, looking at history and understanding, you know, from watching Wall-E, that there's a problem across the whole world. People need to be more active. But now from a company perspective, how did you go set this up? And then I'd love that to follow through really to the culture you've built internally in the company. You're over 100 people now, something like this. So if you could talk us through that journey, please.
Ooh, that's a, you know, sort of podcast in itself. I think that, you know, I'll start from the very beginning, and one of the biggest insights for me building businesses is businesses should not be built around the idea, they should be built around the problem. So a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs come with, what if? And then you have a conversation about the idea, and it's okay. I mean, sometimes it works, but the issue with this approach is that, and this is the worst position to be in for any startup, and if there are aspiring entrepreneurs out there that experience it, I'm sure that they would agree. When you have an interesting product and then you're spending time looking for a problem that this product solves, it's soul destroying. It's absolutely horrible. Now, you need to really think about this very, very early and go from the opposite direction. So in our case, it was a user or it was a person that wanted to be more physically active, and it is universal. Now, how do we make sure that we create a product that addresses that problem and that problem alone? And if you're focusing constantly on the problem, it makes your life and your ability to build a company a lot easier for a variety of reasons. The biggest one is, if you're focusing on a problem, whatever you do, you are building deeper understanding, not of a specific idea or specific product or specific technology, but you're learning about the problem, and that gives you more and more ammunition, power, and intellectual ability to improve on the product, right? Second thing, if you realize that the product that you have is suboptimal because you deepened your understanding of a problem and you need to pivot and build a different product, in situation that you're building around an idea, that is like a rebirth of the company. Pivots generally for businesses are extremely painful. You know, you need to persuade your team, you need to persuade your investors. If you're building around the problem, it's not a pivot. You're just saying like, look, you know, kind of, we're approaching it this way, we just need to slightly change an angle because we've learned this, this, and this. It's not even a pivot per se, it's just a slight adjustment of what you do. So your evolution and your kind of progression forward happens in a lot easier fashion.
And that agile mindset allowed you to decide that you would be centralized to start with, because you were just looking at, as you say, the problem, and this is the way to come at it at that point based on the technology, the stage that you're
It saved us 9 months, and it saved us a few $100,000 to, you know, in building. And ultimately, with the benefit of hindsight, we know that it saved our life, because if we wouldn't have saved that money, if we wouldn't have saved that time, then it would have killed us, because our product all of a sudden exploded, and the proposition was so attractive that we got millions of users, and blockchain wouldn't be able to support us. So, I mean, you know, I wish I could say that, yeah, we knew that we're going to be that big. No, we didn't. We just saved cash and time, but it happened to be a good decision for a variety of other reasons. That was luck.
So we'd do another podcast at some point on the company. I get that. That would take hours. But just for that part of the journey, before then we kind of future project. For entrepreneurs who are out there and haven't quite reached the level of traction that they might want, but they feel like they have got that problem, what would be the difference between you at the point where you had a company, it had okay traction, but you didn't feel like you were the finished entrepreneur, to the entrepreneur that you are today and what you've learned? What's the recommendation there?
First of all, I don't feel like I'm a finished entrepreneur. I constantly run into walls and encounter things that, you know, just really, you know, I don't know what to do with. You know, it's an honest answer. But I think that what helped me and what helped us is continue to focus on the problem and on that mission, which is to make the world more physically active. There were a lot of moments, and I think some of the worst times of our business were when we started focusing on certain sort of business aspects or building a specific revenue stream, where you start thinking about other metrics that absolutely have nothing to do with what you're trying to accomplish. And then you shake your head and you kind of go, hell, you know, why are we driving in that direction when, you know, we clearly need to go this way? So keeping focus and not allowing market, money, investors, users to distract you, because as soon as you have a good momentum, there will be a lot of helpful people coming in and saying, no, you know, you should be doing this, or you should be doing it this way. Always listen, but, you know, be really careful whose advice you take and how you take it on. Stick to your mission, because if that's the driver that kind of gave you energy to create the business, that is going to be something that will carry you through hard times. If you're going to change your course and you're going to go after money or number of users or something that is not deeply moving for you inside, when the road will get tough, that's not going to carry you through, and therefore the chances of your venture perishing are increasing exponentially. So just stick to that mission and that vision, and, you know, kind of no matter what, don't veer off. And if you figure out how to do it, tell me how.
Yeah, I can really relate to that. That's such a strong point. So we're today, it's, you know, turn of April, May 2022.
Yep.
We've been through COVID, which would be fascinating to understand how the communities change their behaviour through that.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Phase.
Yeah. I mean, at the beginning of COVID, we, to be honest, probably like the rest of the world, we didn't know what to think and what to do. And we were expecting that everything will just sort of decline and, you know, our business would nosedive. It didn't. kind of even people in lockdown, they were, kind of the volume or the quantity of physical activity has decreased drastically. You probably heard of Spanish lockdown. It was one of the most draconian in the world. We saw literally within 48 hours that 85% of all physical activity in Spain evaporated. And, but actually people continued using us. So we continued innovating. We added a product that didn't require walking. It was sort of physical activity on the spot, kind of push-ups, pull-ups, etc.
Okay, yeah.
So we started innovating, we started sort of pushing people, and thankfully that dip wasn't nearly as pronounced as we anticipated.
Do you have a sense of pre-COVID and post-COVID if people's overall activity has gone up or down?
Ooh, that's a very good question. We haven't looked at this data in a while, but my hunch would be that it stayed pretty much flat.
Okay.
If there is a change, it wouldn't be sort of statistically significant. Where there is a significant difference in behavior is by country and even continent. So kind of Europeans are, I wouldn't say double, but probably about 70% more active than North Americans. And
Wow.
kind of we've done a lot of digging and a lot of research into this, and its prevalence of public transport and commute versus usage of cars.
Yeah.
Because in the US, it would appear that you just spend a lot more as a percentage of your time in a vehicle moving from point to point, while in the UK and in Europe, people genuinely walk a lot more.
That's so
or
interesting.
use transport.
So there's not much you can do about that, whereas in Europe, my suspicions were like more people would probably choose not to take public transport because you might not want to be in close proximity to people. And also you've got into the habits of walking around when that was the only thing that was allowed. And it feels to me like a lot of people have used that period of time to become more active because you're typically working at home quite a lot. So you need to come up with an activity to spice your day up and get out and stay fresh. But at some point when you
It changed fundamentally the dynamics per day. So, in Europe, you would have spikes in the morning during commute and evening commute. And during COVID, it was a lot more a lot less pronounced, those spikes, because people wouldn't be commuting and they would be going for walks in the morning, during lunchtime, and in the evening. And, there would be no kind of sky high peaks around 8, 9 and around 5 o'clock.
So I just want to talk about your choice, having considered, but the timing wasn't right, Ethereum, and then having partnered and built with Near Protocol.
Yeah.
Could you explain the rationale for that decision?
Sure. As I mentioned already, we, from very early days, we were thinking about being on blockchain. I looked at Bitcoin for the first time in 2011, and kind of stupidly, I actually really, really liked technology, and I wasn't thinking that Bitcoin as a token was particularly interesting. My wife reminds me of that periodically.
It was pretty cheap then, right?
Yeah, it was, I think, 30 cents, between 30 and 70 cents. But the thing that I want to talk about is that we looked at Ethereum, we looked at Bitcoin blockchain in sort of 2016. We decided to go centralized. Then in 2017, we again looked at the blockchain space, thinking, okay, there must be already sort of more choices. And we very quickly realized that actually Ethereum and Bitcoin were dominating, and there was very, very little offer in higher throughput. We looked again in 2018, 2019, when we tested parity, which was the kind of Polkadot, what became Polkadot later, and we were able to get their code base up to 500 transactions per second on about 100 nodes, and we were really, really excited, but we couldn't get it any further. And we thought, you know what, we were already processing more than that back then, and we kind of thought, hang on a second, why would we sort of do this if it doesn't give us sort of an opportunity to continue to grow. So fast forward to 2021, when all of a sudden Solana came into play, Near came into play, Avalanche, Algorand, then Polygon. So all of a sudden, I mean, we're in London, the buses either come in threes or they don't. So that's exactly the situation. There just sort of dozen came at the same time.
Yeah.
And we all of a sudden got really, really busy because we kind of felt, ooh, okay, finally, the time is now. And we looked at more than a dozen different protocols, and we've done testing, we've done, we've done really, really deep research into sort of teams, visions, white papers, etc. And we've chosen Near for two big reasons. Reason one, it was a vision and alignment with the team as to kind of where we're going, because Near's declared vision that is, that you can see through technology and decisions that they make throughout the organization, is to become mass market and to bring in next billion people into Web3.
Yes.
So, that is total alignment with us, because we're about making the world more physically active, and we see crypto and an opportunity to tokenize your physical activity and make it into a valuable asset as a, as a way to turbocharge this vision. So the second thing was technology, because we were able to get more than 1,000 transactions per second on Near. The transaction price is extremely low, which is something that is extremely important for our users who are not whales and they're not crypto natives. For majority of them, this is the first crypto experience they will have. That would be pretty devastating if your first experience is to spend $25 on making the tiniest of transfers.
Yep.
Yeah. So, we couldn't really go with Ethereum. And another thing which really matters to us is that we're about burning calories, not fuel, not electricity. And they are using proof of stake, which is a lot more eco-friendly. So just looking at, team vision and direction and the technology, it was very, very obvious. Well, right now with the benefit of hindsight, it's extremely obvious, but it took some time to make this decision. But we're very, very happy to be working with Ilya, Mariak, and they have very, very strong teams.
Fantastic. And let's now think about, with the right partner in them, with the huge traction you already have, what can we expect to see next? So what are you hoping for around, the token to be in people's hands? How do you see that working moving forward? And if, you explain to me why I would sign up, why would I use this, and what could that mean for me over the next coming years? If you could talk to that, please. Sure.
No, it's a very, very good question, because the vision is really, really exciting. I mean, think of it, phase one of our business was, okay, we can't build on blockchain, we can't really create a crypto token. Let's do it in sort of centralized fashion. Let's see what we can accomplish with that, right? And Sweatcoin up until now was centralized. So, it exists on one server. It's inflationary. 1,000 steps equals one Sweatcoin. As number of users goes up and they become more active, the monetary mass is exploding. So it is very inflationary. And the third thing is that it has only utility inside our existing application. There is no way that you can sort of do much more. I mean, there are unofficial exchanges on Reddit and Discord, but we're really not encouraging them to be doing it.
Yeah.
We were able to get to sort of more than 60 million users with these limitations. And we not just got to 64 million users, we were able to prove that we're making the world more physically active. we're able to strike partnerships with insurers as well as NHS, or National Health Service in the UK, that is working with us in making people with diabetes syndrome more active, because that helps these people prevent becoming diabetic, prevent, from this, very severe health condition happening, and it saves them, a lot of hassle, and frankly, for the state, it saves an enormous amount of money. So, we were able to accomplish this with these shackles of these limitations. Now, imagine what we can do if we create another token that is decentralized, so that we are not the only sort of entity that, attack on which just wipes the whole thing clean. That we're not the only entity, so that vendors, we're working with more than 600 different companies right now, but in the future, because it's a crypto token, anyone that accepts token, crypto, is able to actually give you value. So it opens up an opportunity for the market value exchange tremendously, right? It is not going to be inflationary, because the way we're designing, and token economics, I'm sure that we're going to talk more about that, is that every next sweat, which is our token that's going to exist parallel to Sweatcoin, is going to take more steps to mint.
Yeah.
So right now you earn one Sweatcoin for 1,000 steps. At token generation event, we will match all Sweatcoins that you'll have at that moment, and we'll give you one sweat. And that's sort of once in a lifetime, kind of exchange, not even exchange, it's a matching event, because you're not going to lose your Sweatcoins. But after that, the exchange rate is going to start increasing, and literally within, sort of couple of years, it is likely to end up being somewhere between 3,000 steps and 5,000 steps. So 3 to 5 times more difficulty in minting one sweat. Think of it as a Bitcoin halving, but not instead of once every 4 years, it happens in real time.
So to the public, there's a month or two whilst this once in a lifetime opportunity is that you can get the token for 1,000 steps, and then also you will double it.
Effectively, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So right now, the most rational and logical thing is to install Sweatcoin and walk as much as possible, opt into crypto and create near wallet, and just wait for TGE. So after that, as I mentioned to you, kind of our tokenomics, we probably should talk about two things. Why it's so exciting is, I mentioned already, our supply, while it's not capped, but it is going to have an ever decreasing inflation, because with the rising difficulty to mint every next sweat, the absolute number of sweat produced is going to be decreasing.
Is there a horizon where it becomes finite and almost stops? And what is that?
No, because the mission is to make the world more physically active. We don't want to say that in 100 years' time, your physical activity is not going to generate sweat. What it is going to generate is going to generate tiny little fraction of sweat. But if the token value rises, as for example Bitcoin did, then it doesn't matter how many decimals it is, right? It's still going to be valuable.
At that point, could you give away fractional amounts of the token?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
So, that's one thing. The other thing that we are kind of experimenting with is, of course, our mission is to make the world more physically active. What we don't want to encourage is somebody going and running a marathon and then sitting on the laurels for 2 months. So, what we call this an inactivity fee. We would like to bring in some sort of a loss aversion mechanic where small charges are going to be levied if all of a sudden you stop moving. And it is not to take your tokens away, really. It is to make sure that what sits in the back of your mind is that you actually need to be moving every day, because that is going to make you healthier, that is going to make you live longer, right? So this is on the supply side, and that alone, kind of reducing inflation and inactivity fee is in a kind of very exciting tokenomic curve. Now, if we're talking about demand side, then there are some amazing revenue streams that we started talking about that we're bringing from Web 2. So the first revenue stream is working with partners. So there are a bunch of projects that are interested in bringing users for their metaverse project, or NFT collection that is interested in expanding their user base. Or there is a token that is looking for log drop or airdrop opportunity. We have millions of users, and we will be delighted to offer this value to our users. So what happens in Web 2, we get free product to our users, and we also, as a project, we're getting rewarded for giving projects access to our users.
And you just mentioned the metaverse. So seeing some early stage projects where people might start to portray themselves more as their avatar in preference to obviously their real reflection. And then if you're thinking of that from a health perspective, you know, does the avatar evolve based on what your behavior and activity is?
Brilliant lead into the second revenue stream, which is sort of NFTs. We do know that people, you know, like avatars, they like profiles, they also like them evolve. And we, you know, kind of have a lot of information on your physical activity. So the more active you are, the more evolution there is. And it's not just about physical activity, it is about the sweat that you'll generate. So, you know, another massive demand driver is actually, I don't know, probably Tamagotchi is not the right way of describing it, but it is your representation in digital space where, you know, if you wanted to evolve, if you wanted to, you know, kind of get new characteristics or to demonstrate to the world, you know, your class, your age in this platform, then you need to spend sweat.
Tamagotchi was just too early, wasn't it? 20 years too early.
Yeah. But even then, it was a massive, massive success. I mean,
absolutely,
commercial.
yeah.
So right now we can definitely do it in, you know, with a lot more longevity, but what's even more important, with a benefit to humanity, because that was sort of a thing and game in itself. What's the best that could happen? Well, your Tamagotchi survived, but you know, other than time and effort that you put into it, you know, what did you gain? In our game, you actually become more physically active. You're going to live longer. You know, that there is very, very clear evidence.
You know,
this is worth a lot.
Who you align with is Mr. Elon Musk. He wants he loves humanity and wants to improve our future. There's surely a
if you know him, I'd love an intro.
Not yet, not yet. Searching for Mana is going to get there at some point.
Absolutely.
I'm just thinking,
Elon, if you're watching, you know, let's chat.
Could hook this up to everybody's Tesla and SpaceX's. Be amazing. Okay, so you are on the Searching for Mana show. Do you understand from gaming what mana means?
Yeah.
Magic,
your
superpower.
Yeah, energy, something that, you know, powers you and your abilities.
I asked this question to Arthur Brightman, the founder of Tezos, and he said it was Diet Coke, and I was like, no, it's not the fuel, it's the actual characteristics. So what would you say?
You clearly didn't work for Coca-Cola. You know, that would have been definitely not the first association that would come to me. But hey,
what would you say your mana is, Oleg?
I think it's walking in nature. You know, surprisingly, not necessarily walking, but you know, just being in nature, either surfing or taking a hike, and an opportunity to kind of make my mind wander and you know, sort of test and sample and you know, sort of come up with stuff that I probably wouldn't have been able to think when I'm staring at a screen and checking my emails and you know, sort of interacting with the world. So that is definitely one of the sort of biggest energizers for me.
And you've done quite a lot of expeditions, mountaineering. Is there something on the horizon that you're looking forward to?
Yes, there is something that I'm trying to engineer. You know, my son is 14, and we're discussing with him climbing Kilimanjaro.
Wow.
Because he's reaching that point of there is sort of a rite of passage. You know, he starts to look like a man. He's built, you know, very strong, very big, and I would love to go and climb that mountain because, you know, it's a beautiful experience.
Yeah.
Is not terrifyingly difficult. I've done it already 3 times, so I know kind of how to handle it. But I think that is going to give him such a sense of sort of achievement and breakthrough that you know, I would just love to be there.
I love it. What an amazing experience that would be. And if you do one separately, I'd love to come along to something like that as well and earn some sweat. I'm just going to ask a few more quick-fire questions that we ask all of our guests.
Yeah.
If you starred on the cover of Forbes, what would the headline say?
The guy that moved the world. No.
That's quite good. The guy who moved the world. And they got
I
rich.
think it's a little bit arrogant, but let me rephrase it. I think that thanks to him, we count physical activity in our GDP, something along those lines. Because physical activity has value, we don't count it in GDP, but actually if you have physically active population, it should be counted as and part of nation's wealth. And if you lobby and nobody's moving, you know that this is a ticking time bomb. So I don't know, something around, you know, they tokenized movement, or they made us realize that movement has value, something along those lines.
Love it. What is your current biggest fear?
Loss of focus and diverting off the sort of straight and narrow path.
What's your proudest achievement?
What's my proudest achievement? God. I think, you know, kind of weirdly, just haven't thought about it, but the first thing that definitely flashed in front of my eyes right now is my family. You know, I do have 2 teenage kids and an amazing wife who's very, very supportive. And the fact that we are very good as a unit and our kids are doing very well, despite me sort of spending so much time and so much effort on Sweatcoin and Sweat, is an amazing achievement.
Yeah, I think when you're on those walks in nature, and so you've got outside perspective, you look at things like health and family and friends as the most important things, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just 2 more.
Sure.
Either the most important or something that you would like to recommend to the audience that you've read.
Ooh. Yeah, I think that I would recommend a rather obscure book by the guy called Jonathan Bach, Richard Bach, Jonathan Livingston the Seagull.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Okay.
I read that in psychology.
Yeah.
It's profound. Fantastic. It's a very short book as well.
Yes.
We'll put that in the show notes. Love it. And I leave you to finish with future predictions, but just the final thing, you know, we're searching for Mana here. We're getting quite into the network. We're both going to track down Elon Musk and share that value.
Absolutely.
But, you know, in the next few shows, is there anyone you would particularly recommend would be fantastic to come on the Searching for Mana show?
I mean, you know, you're already planning to interview Near guys. I think that they're absolutely brilliant. Let me
It's one of the
think.
most exciting things in the space at the moment. I love it.
Yeah, no, they're doing amazing work, and
Yeah.
the project is absolutely superb. I think that if I could, I would bring in Solana guys, Anatoly specifically. He's a very interesting, very, very deep character that built a very interesting product that does have some sort of continuous hiccups and issues, and I would absolutely love to watch an episode where sort of he delves into how are they going to make sure that it becomes really, really robust.
Right, because from a community perspective, that might
amazing.
almost have been the one, for the last couple of years.
Absolutely.
But on that point, okay, well, you help me out, and we'll try and
Yeah,
get them onto the show.
I've encountered Anatoly. I think that if you're really interested, I think I might be able to ping him. He's not London-based though. Okay.
I'll fly anywhere.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
But just lastly, just if there's anything that you wanted to get across to the audience or talk about with the Sweat project.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that for me, we're starting to enter into the next phase of sort of Bitcoin and blockchain sort of technology development, where the use case of just pure money, finance, and all of that innovation is absolutely spot on. But we need to start thinking of other things to tokenize, because an example of physical activity where we know it has value, it hasn't been tokenized, and if we do, we can actually create a whole new, extremely big, encompassing all humans of the world economy. I'm sure that there are other examples, and the innovation in this space should start going into TVL, and into users, because I think that we're on the cusp of really becoming mass market. Crypto is acknowledged and is curious to hundreds of millions, billions of people, and we need to start bringing more and interesting use cases to these billions of people, so that we stop living in this fairly small community.
Yeah, just to riff on that, it feels like we're at the point where you're starting to get user cases. We had clearly NFT movement over the last year. Fantastic. And it's been so exciting to have you on the show, because this is such a, I believe, obvious and compelling user case. I haven't really seen many, right? And so I completely agree. It's going to be brilliant to start searching for those projects that are coming out that we need to get behind. Oleg, thank you so much for coming on the Searching for Mana show. Absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much, Lloyd. Pleasure meeting you.